Today I have the opportunity to introduce Courtney VanderHoning. I've had the privilege to watch her go through the journey she's about to explain to you, and her story has affected me tremendously. I hope it does the same for you. So here's Courtney.
For the first years of my life, it was my sister Clarissa and me. Those 4 years, we were buddies, partners in crime. We did everything together. However, as the younger sister, I thought everything she told me to be truth, and quite often she took advantage of my foolishness. An example is when she would tell me to follow her downstairs into our unfinished basement if I wanted to play with her. Every time I did, and every time I wish I hadn't. She would quickly run down the stairs, turn the corner, waiting until I'd almost caught up to her. She saw it as the perfect opportunity to yell at me to run up the stairs because there were wolves in our basement. Before you ask, yes, I did believe her, and no, there has never been real wolves in our basement. This is embarrassing, but this fear of going into my dark basement stuck with me until middle school. Another example is when my family and I went on vacation to Hawaii. It was the summer before I would enter into 5th grade. We had planned to go swimming with sharks. Well, not actually swimming. We would be locked in a cage, and they would swim around us. However, the waves were too big, and I was happy to hear the guys say that it was too risky for us to get in the water. So when the boat went back to land, we decided to go parasailing. My sister and I got strapped into the parasail and began to rise into the air. Things were going great until she had an awesome idea. She thought it would be funny to see my reaction to her pointing at the water and saying, "Shark!" I wish I could say I didn't believe her, but I did. She did it many times, and each time I looked at the water, fearing, searching for the shark that was never there. And still, to this day, I have a fear of sharks. As you can tell, I believed what my sister told me, and because of it, I feared something unnecessary. These stories were not the only area of my life that fear has affected. Certain experiences in my life has caused me to fear an outcome or fear the unknown possibilities that could occur. The summer before entering freshman year, I was convinced that, don't hate me, but that Grand Rapids Christian was a better fit for me. I now know that I was very incorrect, but at the time, I thought Christian High was where I belonged. God had a different plan for me, and that fall, I was enrolled to attend South. There were many reasons I wanted to attend Christian High, and going into freshman year, I was scared that those reasons would cause problems. The fear that I had slowly began wearing away due to experiences I could have only happened at South. The first reassurance that made me feel like South is where I belonged was the opportunity to play on the same volleyball team as my sister. Even though I barely played, I was extremely happy to be on the same team as Clarissa, whom I looked up to. Before the season of playing together, she saw me as her annoying little sister who stole her clothes and spied on her and her friends. But this season changed that. We were forced to spend hours together as teammates. Therefore, that time we spent together brought us to a deeper friendship. My close relationship with my sister has been a constant blessing in my life. After my freshman volleyball season, Clarissa had become an even bigger influence in my life. Before my freshman and sophomore year, we had become closer than I'd ever thought possible. We did everything together. I was certain that she would be there for me when I needed her. However, fall of my junior year, that is not how I felt. The summer before entering my junior year, we had taken advantage of our free time and spent most of it together. Summer flew by, and in a blink of an eye, it was time for Clarissa to move out and go to college. Fear was so present in my life. I feared the distance that it was put between us, that she wouldn't make time for me, but most of all, I feared she would forget me. The fears that came from this situation started to take over my life. Everything in my life made me fear being alone, yet that was the only word that could describe my life at this time. Not only did my home feel lonely without Clarissa, but I had recently switched friend groups at school and was still adjusting to that change. I hadn't had the chance to get close to these new friends, but I wanted them to like me so badly. During that time in my life, I tried extremely hard to be someone who they would like, someone I'm not. In every area of my life, I pictured myself as not good enough. I compared myself to everyone in virtually every area of my life. I did not have as good as grades as him. I wasn't as pretty as her. They were funnier than I was. To me, most areas of my life needed improvement. This way of thinking took a toll on what I put my worth in. I based my worth solely on earthly things. If my hair and makeup were not just right, I did not see beauty. If I got a below average grade, then I was a below average person. I tried to be the person in the room who everyone wanted to be friends with. I would do anything for people to like me. I insulted myself if it meant people would laugh at me. But most of all, I wanted people to think I was happy, because no one wants to hang out with someone who is lonely. That meant every day I'd plaster a fake smile on my face and laugh at things I didn't think were funny. I looked in the mirror and could barely recognize who I'd become. I was a shell of the Courtney I used to be. However, there was one area of my life where I did not pretend to be anyone but myself: sports. Sports has been an area of my life where I could fully express myself. I love the energy, passion, and competitiveness of sports. Practices and games were a chance for me to forget everything that was going on in my life and focus on playing the sports that I loved. Sports has been an area in my life where I've seen God's blessings. First, physically, God has gifted me with height and an athletic body. Second, God gave me a driven, competitive, and overly energetic personality that helps me as an athlete. But most importantly, God has blessed me with amazing teammates who became my family while we were in season together. My junior year volleyball season was a huge blessing from God. There was one memory that impacted me more than the others from that season. At the end of October, we had a tournament by Detroit. We left Friday afternoon, spent the night in a hotel, and played on Saturday morning. Friday night after dinner, while we were hanging out in the hotel room, conversation started to get heavy. I could feel God pushing me to share what I was going through, but I was scared. I didn't know how this would affect what people thought of me. After thinking about it for some time, I got the courage to tell my team what life had become ever since my sister moved out. That was the first time I had told anyone how I actually felt. I started off hesitating to fully let the walls I built up fall down. The whole time I told my story, I was looking at the ground, trying not to notice how they were reacting. When my story came to an end, I took a deep breath and looked up with tear-stained eyes. While I was telling them my story, I hadn't noticed that one of my teammates put her arms around me to comfort me, and they had all moved closer to me, showing me that they cared. After a few seconds of silence, someone spoke up and shared her story of when she felt alone. The next hour was filled with my teammates sharing stories of challenging times in their lives, and I didn't feel alone. It comforted me knowing I wasn't the only one who had gone through a time in their life that brought many challenges. As the night came to an end, one of the girls asked if she could pray before we went to bed. In this moment, I was completely filled with peace, and that took the place of the fear I had built up. My relationship with God matured through this experience immensely. I began digging into His Word and spending time with Him in prayer. I tried to focus less on what others thought of me and more on how God created me. The summer before my senior year, my friends and I went to the Young Life Castaway Camp. Our days consisted of playing games, worshiping God in a big group, splitting into cabins to have small group, and lots of food. When we would worship together, it was inspirational to look around and see arms raised praising God. The songs we sang were powerful and showed God as our comforter, not a distant God. The cabin time talks were a different type of powerful. Although I was friends with all the girls in my cabin prior to Castaway, I did not know their stories. We each got a chance to open up with the group and talk about God in our lives. It moved me to hear all of my friends open up and share how God had worked in their lives. I left Castaway on a spiritual high, and my relationship with God was stronger than it had ever been. When September came and school started up, my church had its kickoff youth group meeting. The leaders introduced the theme for the year and told about how youth group was going to be this year. Our theme was Be Real. This was a fitting theme for what I had been through. I thought I had it all figured out and related the theme to my past personal experiences of being real with myself and who I am. Every other Sunday, when we met for youth group, we would start each time by being asked the same question: how have you seen God this week? This question made me more intentional for looking at God in my everyday life, knowing I would be asked how I've seen Him at youth group. I began noticing the little things in my life that were God at work. As a result of being real with God, He became even more real to me. Every area of my life seemed to have a blessing, which gave me strength and peace. Before this past basketball season, I debated whether or not I should play. I worried that something would happen and mess up my chance to play volleyball at Calvin in the fall. I feared the unknown of what was to come, but I couldn't let go of basketball quite yet. I decided that I would play and make the most of my last season of basketball. I was voted captain of the team and contributed on the court. We did not have the best record, but the team chemistry was amazing. We were literally one big happy family. After practicing games, we would not go home because we wanted to stay together. So we would hang out in the locker room until someone's parents got mad that they were not home yet. I was beyond happy that I had decided to play. We began playing better and had beaten East Grand Rapids, who was a state-ranked team. Things seemed as if they were going exactly how they wanted them to go. On February 3, 2017, we beat Wayland at the homecoming game and had a chance at winning our conference. On February 6, 2017, I had no idea going into practice that it would be the last time I would play competitive basketball. 30 minutes into practice, while I was doing a drill, I was shooting a layup and got hit from behind and landed in just the right way to tear my ACL. I felt sick when I heard the pop, and as I laid on the floor holding my knee, fear came rushing into me. After a minute or so that seemed to last an eternity, Dee, our trainer, came in. She did a few tests on my knee and asked for one of my parents' numbers. So I gave her my dad's number, and she stepped out of the room as the phone rang. I did not want to hear what she had to say, but I couldn't help myself listening. She told him that it was most likely my ACL and that I needed to go to the emergency room that night. My heart sank to the bottom of my stomach as I realized something I feared most as an athlete, a serious injury, just became reality. The week that followed was full of doctor's appointments and people saying that they were sorry, and pain, lots and lots of pain. My knee hurt constantly. I couldn't sleep at night because every time I moved, pain would shoot through my knee, which woke me up and filled my mind with racing thoughts. Not going to lie, physically, I was in so much pain, but mentally, the pain was unbearable. How could God take away the one thing that had always been good in my life? I found so much worth in who I was as an athlete because God blessed me with those talents and made me an athlete. Why would he take away something that he had blessed me with? The next day at school, I wanted to seem tough, like I wasn't scared what my life was about to look like now that I could not play sports. When the truth was, that was what I feared most. Yet no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hide my real feelings. The fear was too overwhelming. I couldn't keep the tears in. Every time someone reminded me of what had been taken from me, I couldn't stop the anxiety that came. As time went on, life continued to be uncomfortable. It was normal for people to stare at me or to hear whispers as I walked around on crutches through the halls. I tried to hide my fear under an artificial smile, having my goal of appearing positive and strong. When people asked me how I was, I told them I was upset, but knew God had a plan in store for me, when in reality, I was more than upset, and I saw no reason for what had happened to me. This lie I told people gave me more and more frustration to say each time. At school, I gave the impression that I had an upbeat attitude about the situation, but I went home in pain and couldn't stop the tears. I was not upset. I was broken. Everything in my life seemed to be falling apart because of this. I could not see God anywhere. The pain I experienced was numbing. I had so many unanswered questions, which were the source of my fear. How could God be good and work for the good of his people if he allows this to happen to me? How could he expect me to be thankful in all situations if he presented situations that caused me so much pain? How could I have hope in such a hopeless state? Each time I went to the doctors, I feared what they would say. The little hope I had disappeared when I received the results of my MRI confirming that I would need surgery. My initial reaction was nothing. I sat there, listening to my mom through the phone. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to respond. I hung up the phone, left class, and walked straight to Dee's room. The news I was just told still hadn't processed. As I told Dee the results of my MRI, I heard myself explain to Dee that surgery was necessary, and it hit me. I needed surgery to fix what God had allowed me to injure. That was when I lost hope, because there I saw nothing for me to put my hope in. My surgery got moved up a week and a half from its original date. On Wednesday, February 15, at 9:50 a.m., I went into surgery. I was scared of all the unknowns that surgery presented. My life was in another human being's hands. What if he messed up and I could never play sports again? Or what if he had to amputate my leg? Or what if something went terribly wrong and I died? After they tried 4 times to put my IV in, I was given medicine that put me under. The surgery lasted 95 minutes and it went smoothly. Now, the healing process began. Physical therapy was scheduled for 2 days after my surgery. After I introduced myself to Amber, my physical therapist, she told me that it would be tough and it was going to hurt. I couldn't move my knee on my own, so she bent it as far as I could go without it hurting too much. She measured how far I could bend it, which was only 1/5 as my non-surgical side. After that, she unwrapped the gauze that hid my knee. She gave me the option to look, but I couldn't find the courage to see the damage. She told me that it looked really good and that the scars would heal nicely. She re-rubbed my knee and covered what I feared. Before leaving, I was given a list of exercises that would help me regain my range of motion, and I was told to do them 3 to 4 times a day. A couple hours after we got home, my mom told me to go through the list of exercises while she quickly went to the store. As I sat on the ground and started to uncover my knee, I was scared of what I was about to see. I unwrapped the gauze and was taken back by the unrecognizable image that was where my knee should have been. I looked at the wounds and the deformed, swollen ugliness that was where my knee was supposed to be. I began to cry out to God, asking him over and over again, "Why? Why me, Lord? I don't understand the purpose for all of this." Seeing my scars made me feel worthless. I was an athlete who couldn't do sports. How could I be worth anything? The God that gave me so much comfort and used to be next to me felt 1,000 miles away. He seemed so far away, and I pulled away from him. The fear of being lonely was present and once again real in my life. I thought that God had left me to deal with this on my own. I didn't look for God in my life anymore because I was convinced that he had left me. After surgery, I couldn't get myself to go to youth group. The question that in the past used to have so much power was now just a reminder of what damage God allowed to enter my life. I didn't want to hear about God in other people's life if I didn't see him in mine. I tried to avoid God's presence in my life. A month after surgery, I decided that I would go to youth group, but I wouldn't really listen. As I went home that night, I clicked on my Pandora music app to listen to music. As I opened it, I saw my Christian radio station. On Pandora, it keeps track of the last time each station was listened to. Under the title of my Christian station, it told me in little letters the last time I had listened to that station. Before my surgery, I had listened to it every morning, but I hadn't listened to it since. 4 weeks had passed since my surgery, and it had been 4 weeks since I had listened to it. This made me wonder whether God had been answering my questions all along, but I wasn't listening. As I clicked on my Christian music for the first time in a long time, I noticed a change of heart. As the song played, I tried listening for God. I didn't hear God answer my questions directly, but I did feel overcome with peace. Lying in bed that night, I still wondered what God's plan was for me, but I did not fear what was to come. I slowly began seeing God once again in my life. The next morning, I turned my Christian radio station back on and opened my Bible to a verse that a friend sent me the night I tore my ACL. It was 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, and it reads, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." And I thought about my scars on my knee. As I look down today, I do not fear what I may see when looking at my scars, for I know when I look at them, I will not be overcome by doubt. I look at them and see God's power, which strengthens me, his love through the people around me, and I am filled with peace that tells me that I can trust in God. To me, my scars are beautiful and are a reminder of what can come from trusting God and living fearlessly. Someone asked me a couple weeks ago if I regretted playing basketball. Before I blurted out, "Yes, this injury has been terrible," I paused and took a second to think about it. I remembered my team, the memories we made, and the relationships that were formed through basketball. Honestly, if I knew going into the season that I would tear my ACL, I would still play. I've learned a lot about who I am through this experience. I now know that I am worth so much to God, and that is how I see myself. Not as an athlete, a student, or a high school girl, but as someone who is priceless in God's eyes. I have learned to abandon my fears and trust in God. I have learned that even though sometimes injuries occur and things don't go how I want them to, and even though God allows all the pain that I know would disappear if he told it to, I still trust in him and place my hope in him because he is faithful. Every day presents its own reason for me to have fear. As a child, I chose to believe my sister's story, and because of it, I was scared. Similarly, when Clarissa moved out, I questioned my own worth and therefore chose loneliness. And when I tore my ACL, I doubted God in my life, which made me choose a life full of fear rather than trusting in him. Although there are many reasons for me to have anxiety about graduating, college volleyball, and the many challenges life brings, I face those hurdles fearlessly because when I fully allow myself to trust in God, challenges seem small, pain is temporary, and fear no longer consumes me. Thank you.